ready to go. And I'm ready to talk about team leadership. And I want to say what's up. Again, Sunday, it is a good afternoon for us to be talking about this. It's something exciting for me. I love talking about team leadership. And sometimes I introduce myself now and I say, hi, my name is Ka'ala, and I am an out of work keynote conference speaker. I am an out of work training consultant. And then it's not true because I can come up on LinkedIn right now and do some training and consulting and make my own little conference right here and say what's up to you guys. And so this is the very first thing that I want to say. I want to say aloha to you before we go any further. Really, this is like always um, the slide that I start out with, and just by saying aloha to all you guys, and it's a good thing for us to do. So I'm here. I got my PowerPoint going on, and we're talking about team leadership, like I said. Um, and it's in response to a poll question that I had shared, I don't know, a couple of weeks back, asking if anybody would be interested in hearing me talk about whatever, because this is what I do, right? This is the last 20 years. I guess since maybe the late 90s, I've been talking to companies, organizations, people, individuals all over the place about these kind of things. I started out talking about customer service training and then moved into leadership and management and team building and have been doing that since the late 90s. I think I got my actual business license to go out on my own in 1999. So I've seen some really good companies and seen some really not so good ones. In the last couple of weeks, when I asked, hey, what are some topics that you might be interested in me talking about? I like using this cool new software. I'm using this thing called Ecamm on my Mac, and it's super, super fun. I'm also using this app called Restream that allows me to stream it all over the place, and I'm kind of figuring it out on the fly. And so that's where you guys are, if you're with me this far, then we're good to go. What I want to do in this particular, I'm going to call it a workshop, a session, a webinar, maybe even, is talk about team leadership, because that was the thing that somebody had said, hey, can you talk about these things? And so the very first one that I want to talk about with you guys is going to be the fact that sorry, let me go back to this here. When we talk about team leadership, I'm going to have to define some terms. And the first term, of course, is team. And then the next term is going to be leadership, because I can't really talk about how to get to these, to be a good team leader until we know really what those things mean. And so I'm going to talk about leadership here, some leadership styles, and kind of give you a real brief definition of teams, all in about, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, and have a good time. Enjoy my cool new apps here. So we'll figure out and see if I can do it. I'm trying to get my thing all set up, and who knows if this will work or not. Let me see if I can make this happen. Look, I did it. That's good. And look, I did that too. So here's what we're going to do. I want to talk about team leadership, but I want to talk about it with kind of the end in mind. Remember Stephen Covey back in the day, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, wrote that book. Well, the end in mind for team leadership, right? What is the outcome? What do you get if you are a good team leader, or if your team has good leadership? What happens if you have that? And really, the bottom line of this is that you get the job done, right? You get the job done, you get it done on time, on budget, the way it's supposed to be done, with the specs, with the requirements. And there's a couple things. Speaking about what those outcomes are, there's three things, as a matter of fact, I think that you can use to identify how good a leader you are. Number one, did you get the job done as a team leader? Did the goals that you set get accomplished? That's number one. Number two, was your team pretty happy about it? Did they get the job done, and did the morale stay high? Like, I'm not sure if you've ever seen people. Obviously, it's not a good team if the job doesn't get done. But if you get the job done and your team just falls apart after, well, I'm not going to call that a good outcome. So it has to have those two things, where you got the job done and the team was pretty happy. That's what I'm calling. But the third thing, and this is the thing that I've started adding, I don't know, a couple of years back, but it's not just did the job get done and was the team happy. The third thing about whether or not you have good team leadership is, are you happy? So if you've ever seen the team get the job done, the team was all happy, but the leader burnt out to a crisp, then you know what I'm talking about. And if that's you, then you know what I'm talking about, right? So all three things have to be in place for, I think, you to consider yourself a good team leader, right? We get the job done, team's happy, I'm happy too. So when we look at outcomes, though, there's the two things I want to break out of that getting the job done. Number one, if you have this sense of togetherness, you actually have a really high performing team. I'm sorry, if you have a good team, you're going to have high engagement. If you have high engagement, you're going to have high performance. I just did a workshop on this last week for a company, and it was kind of a chicken or the egg question. Does the high engagement lead to good performance, or does good performance lead to good engagement? I'm going to leave you with that question. I'm not even going to talk about it, but I love it because it sounds like it would be obvious, right? It sounds like it would be, well, I'm not even going to say which one I think it is, but if you think it's one or the other, you might want to think a little bit deeper on that one. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All I want to talk about on this, though, before I go any further, is that when you're looking at the benefits of good team leadership, or you being a good team leader, then you're going to have high engagement, you're going to have high performance, and that's what we're talking about. When I'm talking about engagement, I'm usually referring to the engagement the way that Gallup talks about. Like the Gallup polling organization, they've been doing this thing on business employee engagement for years worldwide. And lately, the engagement in around the world actually has been increasing. It's been going up, like it's been positive. But positive increased by maybe like 2 or 3 percentage points, right? Let me show you what their what do you call this? Their conclusions. This a couple years back, 2018, I think this was. Take myself off of this real fast. There's three categories for Gallup's engagement survey, and they're number one, people who are engaged, and those are people who like their job. Those are people who want to do a good job. They come in, they're fired up, they feel connected to the job. There's an emotional connection, and that what they call engaged people. They're not just there to punch a clock, right? So they if there's some discretionary free time, maybe they come in a little early, they stay a little bit late. They work for the job because they like it. They wake up and they're excited. Maybe the weekend comes and they're like, oh, bummer, there's a weekend. I'm not sure if it goes that far, but something to consider. So Gallup is saying that about 34% of the people, I think this is America. I gotta double check though. I'm not sure if I pulled the worldwide stats on this one, but about 30, I say 30% of my mind because they can do the math, but 34% of the workforce is engaged here. People who are what I just described. The second group, though, is the people that Gallup simply says are not engaged. A little over half, 54% in 2018 of the workforce was not engaged. This doesn't mean that they were bad. It just means that they're working 9 to 5, they're in, they're out, boom, 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 or 8 to 4, whatever the time frame is, whatever the time you told them that they have to work and show up, that's what they're doing. There's no extra time. There's no like, oh, wait, I'll stay. Or let me come in a little bit early and fix that. There's none of that going on. It doesn't mean that they're mad, but it doesn't mean that they're happy either. I consider this group neutral. I consider these guys, they're kind of in between, right? They're like sort of the wait and see people is what Gallup calls them. If there was a 5-point performance evaluation or a job appraisal, they would get a 3. These are not the high performers. These are not the 4s and 5s, but they're not the 2s and the 1s out there. So they're going to be okay. The next group over here, when we talk about the actively engaged or disengaged or what have you, these guys are the ones that are actively disengaged. So there's engaged, not engaged, and actively disengaged. The big difference between the actively disengaged and not engaged are these guys, there's an emotional element to this. These guys are not only not happy with their job, they're not neutral here, like they're not engaged. They're not happy. They are feeling like, I hate this job. I hate this every time I show up over here. So they're full of a lot of negativity. When they wake up in the morning, they're not excited to go to work. If anything, they could be excited to go and maybe pull people down. Gallup actually says some of these guys are looking to figure out how they can sabotage the team, sabotage the company, and they're not happy. There's a large percentage here when you think about it. So 1 out of 10 people on your team, and if a team is like 8 to 12 people, somebody inside there is not happy. So the people who are engaged are happy. There's a positive emotion. The people who are not engaged are kind of neutral. These guys are mad. So unhappy, crying, yelling face. So when we talk about engagement and performance, the benefits of good team leadership, you're trying to see that you're going to see that the benefit here is going to lead to engaged people. If you are a good team leader. So let me talk about leadership, right? We're talking about teams and leaders. Let me start with the last part of that, give you some definitions, some ideas. then talk about a definition of teams, and then be done with that, okay? Because it's a Sunday for me, so let's see. So we'll talk about leadership styles here. And when we look at leadership styles, some of the ways that we understand it, there's all kinds of books out there, all kinds of definitions of leaders, thick encyclopedias of what leadership is and what it should be and all these kind of things. And I've heard people define leader in a lot of different ways. Uh, but one of the best was for me maybe, shucks, over 30 years ago when I got the kind of my first leadership position. And I remember being not comfortable with that title. Like, I'm the leader. I remember I was on the phone once talking to somebody, and my boss was watching me, and I said, "Hey, listen, I'm one of the leaders here." And my boss told me, "You are the leader," is what he said, or kind of mouthed at me. And I was uncomfortable with the idea. But I remember him pulling me on the side and saying, "Hey, listen, I know you're not comfortable with the idea of being a leader, but maybe you're defining it differently. All you got to do is look behind you and see if anybody's following, right?" That was his definition. Is anybody following Ka'ala? Then you're a leader. But I've seen all the other definitions of leadership before. One of my favorite, though, that stands out, John Maxwell, when he says, John Maxwell will come up and say things like, "A leader is just one word, it's just influence. If you have influence, you are a leader. If you influence effectively, in other words, to get the job done towards the vision, mission, and accomplishing the goals, then you're going to be a good leader. You're going to be an effective leader." And so this is where it gets tricky. When I say good and bad, people always talk about like Hitler, for example, who was a very effective leader, not a good moral man from our Western perspective, but he was an effective leader, right? He was able to get pretty far down his vision and mission and accomplishing his goals. Now, it was different for people in our country, but you know what I'm talking about, right? So good, bad. When I say good, I mean you're getting the job done, right? So the idea here of leadership styles, though, is a little bit different. And so leadership styles, we're going to talk about this continuum of control. Okay, so let me put that up on the screen over here. Where on this side, where is it? On this side, where's the thing? on this side over here. I can't get it in. Okay, so this side over here where it says high control, and the other side is low control. This is what I'm talking about. This is a continuum of control. So when you're in a very, very high control leader, we usually talk about that kind of leader as being autocratic, right? Like if democratic, like peoplecratic, auto like one person. Totalitarianism is an idea of a high control leader. The democratic or more participative, it could be a better word actually, democratic. Because democratic suggests the majority rules. I like the idea of participative here in describing a leadership style. And on the far side of the continuum, under the low side of this, is the hands-off leadership style or the laissez-faire. And so you can go back and forth. You can be any place along this continuum of control, and it will kind of help to kind of define what your leadership style is. And so I'm going to ask you that right now. If you're watching this later on and you actually have like some comments, I mean, if you have some thoughts on this, drop that in the comment. Tell me what leadership style you more gravitate towards first, right? Think about that. Put that in the comments. All right, let me ask you another question, right? Which one is the best leadership style? Now, a lot of people who tell me, "Hey, listen, I'm on the autocratic side, high control, I want to get the job done," right? And so that is going to be the best way because that's how you get the job done. It's actually, there's some benefits, there's pros and cons, right? So if I look at this autocratic style, it usually is faster because there's not a lot of discussion like in the democratic or autocratic style. I'm sorry, the democratic or participative style. There's not a lot of discussion. What do you think? What do you think? I think this. I feel that. Nobody is going down that path, right? Autocratic, I say, and I do, and I say you do what I tell you to do, right? So that's a benefit actually. It's faster, saves you time. You don't have to get everybody's input. Obviously, obviously the cons on this are going to be that you don't get everybody's input. You don't get the chance to build that sort of collaborative feel in your team. So when we talk about which one is the best, could that be one of the best? Think about it. So the next one, the participative, obviously you get an increase in that sense of collaboration, the participation. Everybody wants to talk about it. But one of the negatives, the cons of this, is that it just takes so much time, especially if you want to give everybody in the group time to talk, time to contribute. If you want that, then it's going to take some time. But again, you get that benefit of everybody having been heard. One of the other negatives, though, that's a little bit more subtle, is that sometimes in the democratic or participative process, we vote. And so, like right now, it's like almost voting time here in America. And in the democratic kind of process, or I guess we're a republic, but whatever, the majority of people who voted for this person, or the person who gets the most votes wins. And so, like in at your company or on your team, the idea that gets the most votes might win. And so what does that mean? It means that the people who were like 49%, like the other one, we're not going to be happy, right? So there's some benefits, pros and cons of all of these things. The last one is an interesting one, pros and cons. Laissez-faire, we think about this idea of hands off. I think that's what that means. One of my, I had a participant, a student in one of my management classes who didn't speak French as well as I do. I don't speak French at all. But he said, "What is it, lazy fairy?" I go, "No, laissez faire," I think is what they say. So hands off. This is the leadership style where the leader's not around, where the leader actually goes, "It's all you. You guys do you. You're the team. You make the decision, and I'm out." And so another interesting question for you to think about is, does a team even need a leader? Interesting. We love that. We'd love to get on some discussion about that. Anyway, so hands off, laissez-faire. The benefit of that one is what? The team. The team is it's all their contribution. Everybody has to work together to figure this out. There is no guidance from the leader. Some of the negatives is that there are no guidance or there's no input from the leader. So, but yeah, you have these pros and cons again, and the idea is this: what do you feel best, most comfortable as a leader in? So, which one do you gravitate towards? And if you said, here's an interesting thing, and I think there are right and wrong answers to this, but you can put whatever you want, and you're probably going to be right because this is for your particular team. But I think one answer that kind of fits everywhere is it depends. Which one is the best? It depends. So if you said, well, I'm going to be like a leader, yeah, this type of leader on this type of situation, and this type of leader on another type of situation, then you're going to be pretty much on it because it depends, right? How do I lead here? Who's on the team? What are their communication styles? What are their work styles? All of those things are going to factor into how you lead. So if you can figure that out, that's not bad, right? Which one is the best? And that's what I want to talk about on this particular thing here. It's kind of it depends. So two things, right? We're talking about teams and leadership. I'm going to end with this stuff over here. Nice orange. Good job. I'm just pulling slides off of things that I've done in the past. But this is my favorite definition of teams from two guys, Katzenbach and Smith. I think the title of the book was something like The Wisdom of Teams. But they say, and they define a team as a small group of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose. And it goes on, there's other factors inside here, but I want to just pull this part out, mostly because it's long, it's a little bit involved, but I do think that you should have a definition of teams. You should have a kind of a framework, a theory of teams if you're going to be a team leader. Why? Because it affects your ability to get the job done, to make sure everybody's happy, and make sure you're happy too. Okay, so when we look at this definition here from Katzenbach and Smith, there's a couple of key components here. Number one, a team is a small group of people. If you are saying, how do I lead a team of 1,000 people? I'm going to say that's not a team. You're probably going to break that down into, chunks of, 10 groups of 100 or something. Is that right? Like 1,000. Yeah. Then within those 10 groups, maybe you pull out, a couple of leaders who are going to oversee that, or so on and so on and so on. So maybe you're working with a smaller group, and that small group, most teamologists are going to say is like 8 to 12, right? So 8 to 12 people, that's the what they mean by small, but it depends. So like a basketball team is going to have 5, but really there's more people, right? Like I remember asking somebody how many people are on a football team. And in my mind, or somebody asked me that, I started thinking like 11. But there's more, right? There's people who are obviously playing offense, defense. There's the special teams. And do you count the coaches as being part of the team? A lot of people do. I do. So you count all of the trainers, water boy. I was a great water boy when I was a kid. I was a part of the team. I got the jacket. So I'm saying that the team, um, the football team is pretty big, right? But when you're talking about team leadership, and I'm asking you how big your team is, if it's less than eight, then and if there's good reason for it, that's fine. If there's more than 12, whew, it's hard to find a good reason for a team there because the challenge of having too many people is that it's hard to communicate, right? It's hard to keep everybody on the same play page. It's hard to keep everybody moving towards the same direction and goal. But if there's too few people, then what happens for us is that people get burnt out, or you don't have the resources, you don't have the ideas, you don't have the leverage because you don't have enough people. So a small group of people, complementary skills. We'll talk about that missing letter in just a little bit. Well, probably not even on this one, but the thing I wanted to look at here is the common purpose. And when we look at common purpose, this is a common direction. This is a little bit bigger. It's sort of the level above a team's goals. The common purpose is that where are we going? What is our vision? What is our mission? If you have a small group of people, but you don't have a common purpose, if you don't have any kind of goals at all, then you're not a team. Okay, you're just like a group of people standing in line to get food at a restaurant or something. But once you're a small group of people, about 8 to 12, have that common direction, we want to achieve a common purpose, then you move into becoming a team. You have a shot at being a good team because you now have the elements of a team. You're a small group of people, you have a common purpose. And so that's the thing I want to talk about with you guys today. Kind of define that before we get into the rest of it. How do you actually be a good team leader? And I wanted to talk about styles of leadership and also like what exactly a team is. And so if you can get to those kind of things again, remember we talked about these two words, this idea of engagement and performance. You can get highly engaged people. You're going to get high performing people. And if you can do that, you're going to be able to get the job done and people are going to be happy and you're going to be happy too. And so that's where we end up with this idea of what I want to talk about here. And team leadership, this was fun for me. I do get to talk. I like it. And I get to use my things, I get to practice with it and see what's up. But anyway, so if you're watching this later on during the week, this is a Sunday. I hope you're having a good start of your week, and Monday or Tuesday, whenever you watch it. Take care, and I'm going to leave with this last thing over here that I normally put down by saying aloha to, oh, shucks, it's not working. Where is it? Is this it? Yeah, it says aloha to you guys, and we'll talk again. I'll talk again later, but you can certainly comment and be good to go. All right, I am out, and press the button. Have a good rest of your day. Aloha.